everyone, and welcome back to our fourth episode here on Split. For those who have been following us since day one, thank you, and we appreciate every subscribe, every comment. For those of you that recently joined, gracias, thank you, danke wel. And last month, we did the impossible and had our first guest on here. I think it went super well. Carlyle is always such a great guinea pig. She is. I can't believe it is the fourth episode already. Time goes so fast, it's insane. You've been keeping this month guest a secret, Adrienne. Who is it? Please, I'm dying to know. It's one of the best narrators in the entire world, and I seriously struggled so badly to keep it a secret. It's my girl, Erin Mood.
Yay!
Yay! Okay, so for those of you that do not know who this talented lady is, she is the narrator of the Dragonian series, and she did Queen Catherine and Elena's voice in Moonbeam 2. Erin and her pseudonym, I hope I'm saying it right, Felicity Monroe, is an award-winning narrator of over 300 books. She has been working in the industry for 15 years. As a classical trained actor in New York City, Erin started with audiobooks as an actor survival job, editing, directing, and proving around 500 and more audios for recorded books. Then started narrating in 2009. She is a conference panelist, podcast guest, and library event guest. She has developed curriculum and teaches audiobook narration privately in workshops, conferences, and schools. She is noted particularly for her heart, humor, honesty, characterization, and accent work. In her other life, she is also an international certified yoga therapist and teacher of anatomy, has a certification in applied positive psychology, Reiki, and Thai massage. She now lives in beautiful Vancouver, Canada. I love the Dragonian series audios. She did such a fantastic job with all the accents. I think your audios are by far one of the best ones out there. All thanks to Erin. She is crazy talented when it comes to accents, and I fell in love with her voice tone. She is really taking the Dragonian series audios to a next level. So, with that said, welcome, Erin, and congrats on becoming our fourth guest on our Split channel, a podcast that isn't a podcast.
Thank you so much. That was such a nice introduction. I really appreciate that. I'm so thrilled to be here. It's nice I got to see you in Johannesburg, but well, one of you. But I haven't been able to see you in a long time, so this is really awesome. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on here, Erin. I will love it if you can be Morgan's voice, as I can't find a narrator that can do South African accents, and the South African narrators do not get back to me. So can you do a South African English accent? Not the ones we speak, please, as that is an accent on its own.
So many South African accents. So South African, eh? So, well, I can try ladies, but sometimes it comes off sounding as New Zealand or Australia. So it takes a little work sometimes. South African, I will say, is one of the hardest accents. Well, of the many accents that are in South Africa.
Jumping into our interrogation, I always wanted to know through a narrator's point of view what narrators are looking for when signing a new project with an author. What are the critical points in a book you are looking for, Erin?
Well, I think, every situation is a bit different every time and for every person involved, both authors and narrators. The first things that I look for is, does the book interest me? And truth be told, I don't think I've ever turned down a book because it didn't interest me, because I believe, the human story, or the way that I think human story is the way that we understand ourselves. So books and storytelling is the way we understand ourselves. So I always feel like there is really something to be explored. So I haven't yet turned down a book because it didn't interest me, but that could potentially happen, I guess. Also, one of the things I do look for is, does it fit within my moral compass? And so this would, for me, be particularly, does it promote racism or sexism or violence against women or the LGBTQ plus community or the BIPOC community? And if it does promote violence or any of those things, then it's a hard no for me. Luckily, again, I haven't had to turn down any books because of that. I find more often than not, if those subjects are brought up, they're brought up as exploration and self-reflection and hopefully betterment quite often. I do look for if a book is well edited, especially if I'm working with an independent author. I really, really want to make sure that the time and money has been spent in editing, because it's already, what I do is difficult enough without me having to be like, oh, there's 4 typos in this sentence, and oh, that's a double word, and I don't know if that's supposed to be there. And so I'm not an editor. The book has to be edited really well. And I will say, authors, there is not a book that I have narrated that didn't have a small typo in it. So it does happen. Don't kill your editors, but do make sure that everybody's doing their part to make sure that the best editing possible has happened on that book. And then another thing that I look for is, especially if I'm engaging independently, is the author established? I work with authors that have never done, it's their very first book. Or I've also worked with authors who have never done an audiobook before, but are well published author. And that's fine. I'm not going to discriminate against somebody who's newer to it. It just means that my engagement with them, my explanation of how my part of this work happens needs to be very clear. We need to make sure to set boundaries with one another that are very clear. And for them to get an understanding that what I'm doing and how I'm doing it will have some engagement with them, but ultimately it won't have all engagement with that author, that there needs to be a trust and relationship kind of created between the two of us before. If an author is more well established, more than likely they're going to be going through a publishing house. If they engage independently with me, they might have had some experience with audiobooks, but I want to make sure to engage with them, and they can engage back with me and ask questions. If you don't know, ask your audiobook narrator. And that's when you need to make sure that you're working with somebody who does have an understanding of how the industry works as a whole. And then on the artistic side, we, as the narrator, I deeply believe are holding the author's art in our hands. And we need to honor that and make sure that we are being true to the manuscript, which means we have to read the entire thing once at least. We need to ask questions if we have them about character, about pronunciations, and a lot of other things. And that it's the author and the narrator coming together to create a little art baby together. That inevitably there needs to also be trust from the author, because every character voice that when you were writing it, when it comes through my filter, my lived experience, might, when I read it, come off a little differently than how you heard it. It's still valid. It just might be different than how you originally envisioned it. Same with every sentence, of course, in a book like, 300-page book. I'm not going to say every sentence exactly how you heard it when you were writing it or editing it, but it doesn't invalidate it. It just is my interpretation of your art. Now, a lot of the time that jives really closely. And then sometimes there might be a little bit of difference in interpretation of that. But overall, the whole story is us coming together to create that story. And you've done this huge amount of work, and now it's my turn to interpret that work and bring it into the world in another form. And so that feels really important to me. So I need to honor my artistic freedom and performance and honor your deep work that's gone into these books. On the business side, one of the things I kind of look at is there, it's great if there's an understanding of how much time goes into preparing and executing an audiobook at a high level. So I have to prepare the manuscript. So sometimes this is a lot, sometimes it's a little. So with the Dragonian series, there's one or two characters, just one or two. And so I have to make a whole character list. I have to look into all those characters. If I have any questions about accents, where people are from, if I'm unsure, especially with a series, I need to make sure that I check in with quite a few of those characters with you. If there's languages, made up words, accents that those characters, I notice, oh, it feels like there's an accent written in here. Is it this accent? So making sure to put that in. Is it a strong accent or a light accent? Also, then I need to research all the pronunciations. And once I've gotten those from either internet resources or from the author, I need to then write all of that out in phonetics for my editor, for continuity throughout the book, because sometimes I'll think I have a word and then maybe I mess it up. And I need my editor to have a reference point so that they know to take me back on that, to do a pickup or a retake on that. So that's all before I even get in my booth. I might also have to do accent research and stuff like that. Then I get in my booth, and generally speaking, as a more established narrator, I'm in my booth for 2 to 1. So for every 1 hour of finished product, I'm in my booth for 2 hours. Now, of course, as I've continued on, I'm a little bit more efficient than that, but it also depends on the book. How difficult is the book? Is there 10 people in the scene and I have to make sure I've got kind of everybody delineated really nicely? It might take me a little bit longer. Then my editor works on that book, and I've paid, if I'm working independently, I've paid my editor. If I'm working with a producing house, then they have editors of their own. And then they come back to me with retakes. And then I need to do all the pickups or retakes and mistakes to make sure that that's finished. And then my editor masters the book. So all of that time is what there needs to be kind of an awareness of. In that same way as a writing process takes time, takes years often to have all of the processes that go into writing happen. The same thing is happening with audiobooks, maybe a little bit more truncated, but it does take a decent amount of time. So because of all of that, there's different pay rates. And there's different norms in the business. And of course, all of this comes from my perspective as somebody who's been in the industry for 15 years, but also just my perspective. And so it is a lot of, you get what you pay for. A lot of actors and narrators come into this business with different things, sometimes huge listener bases, sometimes a lot of business savvy and different social media interaction. So we all come with different things. And the key is the performance is the most important thing, most important thing. And then what else is your narrator bringing to the table? Fundamentally, including good communication and all that kind of stuff, just being a nice person. So there's a lot of different pay rates, like royalty share plus, where I get a little bit of money for all of that time and my editor, and then I'm going to get a little bit of royalties going forward. And then per finished hour is I get a larger, what looks like kind of sticker shock sometimes, a larger amount of money, but I'm bought out. So I'm not going to make any money going forward. It's just that one time. And I'm paying my editor, my health and retirement and pension through my union, and all of that time that goes in before the book and during the book, plus our communications from author to narrator. So that's what I actually usually prefer. There is also royalty share, which is just pure royalty share, but that does mean that financially, I have to pay my editor all of that back time. And then I'm going to hope that the royalties are enough to pay me back at what would have been the same per finished hour rate, right? So I'm taking a big risk, which means that the author fundamentally needs to have something to share. I can have a lot to share as a narrator, but if it's a pure royalty share, there needs to be a huge following, lots of books that are selling at a high rate of sales, other audiobooks that are selling at a high rate of sales. Also, you have to decide as an author, if you have a lot of like Twitter engagement, Instagram, big followings, huge followings, and all of the books you've done in the past sell at really high rates, remember that means you're going to be paying me out for a long time. So it might actually behoove you to do the bigger sticker cost and just buy me out right at the top, and then you get to make all that money going forward, make up your money and then get that on top. So there's a lot of different approaches, and different narrators have different comfort around things. I really like per finished hour. And part of why I like that is because I kind of figure you've put in a huge amount of work as the author, and I do want you to reap the benefit of that. And that being said, there are some books that I wish I'd done some royalty share on because they've done really well, right? So it all depends. It just depends on the situation and the actor.
I want to definitely give the option of per finished hour, as I believe an artist needs to be compensated thoroughly for their job. And it's such a chance one take if it's royalty shares. But you explained that question so beautifully. I want to know, how many titles have you narrated up to date? Which ones are your favorite? And you don't have to say the Dragonian series. It's something I always want is audio suggestions. So which books have you narrated that were exceptional to you?
Oh, thank you. Well, I've narrated well over 300 books now, so it's hard sometimes to pick a few out. Truth be told, and I'm not just saying this because we're together on this, but I love the Dragonian series. I loved it. I loved it so much. I would come home and tell my roommate all about the story, like what happened on that day and where all the characters were. And it actually gave me a whole different appreciation on YA fantasy. I'd done some before that, but it just, I love the female protagonists in YA fantasy and their coming of age story, coming into their strength and coming into owning their magic, that they can be somebody in that world. I just love it. Another one that I've done recently is Nicole Conway's Mad Magic saga. And I've done a ton of others that I super love, both the later teenager ones, like the Dragonian series, and also younger fantasy ones. I just love the world. I also really love sweet romances and fantasy romances, and I do all romance under my pseudonym. And I will say, I'm out about my pseudonym, but a lot of narrators do not want you to make reference to them and their pseudonym together ever. So never out a pseudonym. Mine is Felicity Monroe, so I'm already making that decision. And I just choose to put every romance under Felicity Monroe, just so that I don't have to delineate by genre. So whether it's a sweet romance or something a little bit more erotica, it all goes under Felicity Monroe, just so that kind of stays in one place and I don't have to decide if it falls under the romance genre, that's where it is. So I love those. And this year I got to do a really, really cool book about an internet stalker. And it was a multi-narrator book by Simon & Schuster produced it, called Follow Me by Kathleen Barber. It was so scary because it was all around, social media stalking that turns into something more. It was like really, really scary, and I loved it.
Oh, your job is so interesting. And I'm so honored that you put my series on your love list and that it actually helps you to enjoy young adult fantasy. It's a real ego booster. Thank you for watching our latest episode. And remember, if you want to subscribe, not miss anything, do so right now. Do not forget to like the button as well. And if you have any questions and any information you would like to put in the comment section, please feel free. We really appreciate everything. Until next time, bye.